Yeah, perfect. Welcome, everybody. Very pleased to be with you here today. My name is Gökçe Mete. I'm representing South Pole. I'm the global lead for the company, and I'm also co-founder of Women in Green Hydrogen. So we are going to have a great session today. We're going to focus on offtake, and I have with me an excellent panel. What I'll do is I'll let you introduce yourself, but we have Paul from Tata Steel, and then we're going to go from that one. I'll let you introduce yourself and your company briefly.
Good. Well, thank you. I'm Paul Vonk. I'm from Tata Steel. For the Tata Steel site in IJmuiden, which is about 45 minutes away from here, we want to go from making steel using coals to making steel using green hydrogen. And for that, we'll be potentially a very, very large off-taker. You hear these big numbers floating around, but if we want to go the full 6 million tons of production of steel that we have right now, we want to make it green, we need about 330 kilotons of hydrogen. So that is quite a big ask.
Thank you. My name is Hoolwerf, Deputy Director of the International Department of Port of Amsterdam. Very happy to be here today on this panel, including with two companies that are also located in the greater Amsterdam region. So as the International Department, we have a very strong focus on the development of the partnerships that are necessary to realize the full value chain for the hydrogen economy, because hydrogen is a key instrument for the decarbonization of the industries that are active within the Port of Amsterdam.
Yeah, I'm Mark Duppen. I'm from SkyNRG. I'm Technical Director of all the capacity developments in Europe. And we have SkyNRG is a global leader in SAF, and we have a full pipeline of SAF developments, also in Europe, and especially for the PTL SAF developments, we need a lot of green hydrogen.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, I'm Naveen Ahlawat. I had green hydrogen, gasification, and carbon capture utilization for Jindal Steel Group. So, pretty exciting time, and I'll talk about our project. We are putting up world's largest green hydrogen-ready steel plant in Oman. Very interesting country, very exciting country, and happy to interact with you. Thank you so much.
Hey, my name is Bente Bauknight. I'm the head of asset and business development with Hydro Havrand. Hydro Havrand is a green hydrogen producer within the group of Norsk Hydro, building on 100 years of experience from industrial development and renewable energy. So our focus is to help our customers in the hard-to-abate sectors to decarbonize and change to renewable energy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. As you can see, we have a very diverse panel. We have an industry cluster, so to speak, from Amsterdam Port, located quite near to each other, of course. Then we have, we have a representative from Norway, quite a vertical integrated setup for offtake, and we have a representative from Oman. So we're going to hear a lot of respective reflections from different perspectives. But let's have a look at offtake. We've been discussing it for 2 days already now, that we know offtake is one of the main barriers for final investment decisions and to get this economy, it's crucial to get hydrogen economy off the ground. So what do you think? Maybe we do the same round this time again, but what do you think? Let's start with you, Paul. And I would like to hear from each of you what needs to happen for offtake offtake agreements to be signed, within the next, let's say, 2-3 years horizon.
Shall I kick off? Well, thank you, Gökçe. Well, I think I've been walking around since Monday morning here, actually, with all kinds of events on the side. And I do think that there's a very big change compared to the atmosphere and vibe that there was last year. Because last year there was all over optimism, the sky was the limit. And right now I think I haven't heard a single quote on a hydrogen price, because everybody's suddenly a lot more realistic. Everybody's like, well, we've got this hurdle ahead of us. It's actually quite complicated, but it's doable. It's the future. We should do it. So I'm really excited about this new form of realism that's coming in. It's like, how are we actually going to challenge that? So I think on the technical side, I think it's very important to have a connection between the producer and the off-taker. So there's a direct linkage between the two in order to complete the loop, to really build this value chain from scratch. But what we as an off-taker need, we need clarity on regulations, but most importantly, as a steel sector, we would like to see in Europe a level playing field, because we applaud all the subsidies are coming to really get down the cost curve. But what we also notice in Europe, that there's between the different sectors, some sectors already have obligations, that it's very difficult to come up with a level playing field, like for example that they have in America. In America, you produce, you receive. Here in Europe, if we have to compete with refinery, it's going to be very difficult for us, because they already have an incentive mechanism in there for, in Holland, the hernieuwbare brandstoffenheden. So if that's sorted, there's clarity in a level playing field, then we can commit.
Brilliant.
Yeah, very strong points. So as Port of Amsterdam, we obviously subscribe also to the points that are raised by Paul, and most definitely also by the points that will be raised by Mark. So from our perspective, Port of Amsterdam is the fourth largest port in Europe, and it's very much an energy hub, and still very much reliant also on fossil energy sources. So for us, the switch to hydrogen is a very high strategic priority. So I think there are a number of aspects that will need to happen in order to find that connection between off-taker and supplier. So part of it is on the off-taking side. So you need also a lot of, you need some additional infrastructure to accommodate the different vectors that will deliver hydrogen from countries of production to the Port of Amsterdam. So the permitting process, for example, is a key aspect that we need to tackle within the area that we manage and develop. So I think that's a key point. The second point is very much related. So we need to get the hydrogen from point A to point B, and still the different vectors that we have some technological challenges that need to be tackled. So I do see a lot of progress, in particular in the pathways that we focus on, so liquefied hydrogen and liquid organic hydrogen carriers. But I think there's still a couple of steps that need to be taken in that regard. And the third point that I will make, and again, very much also in favor of the points that my two neighbors will make, is basically the realization with different companies within the Port of Amsterdam how they can use hydrogen within their own process. So a steelmaking facility, a production facility for ESAF, they have quite a good understanding of how they can incorporate hydrogen within their own process. But you have a lot of companies also in between at a bit of a smaller scale that might not handle these types of goods. And they are looking, for example, to make a switch from natural gas to hydrogen, so a one-on-one substitution. And that will be very difficult also with regards to the price point, for example. So I think there's also a need for increased awareness from the side of off-takers in terms of how they can potentially use hydrogen, and if it's the most efficient way to make a switch to a more sustainable energy source.
Mm-hmm. Good points. And Mark?
Yeah, I probably will add on this most, but especially for our PTL, our ESAF developments, the hydrogen is one of the biggest hurdles, is the biggest amount for our business case that drives our business case. And we see a huge mismatch between expected pricing for hydrogen and the actual pricing. And in the end, the pricing for hydrogen in Europe is way too expensive to make a competitive business case. And the hydrogen we need to be built from, they need to use additional renewable assets. It needs to be cost competitive, and for sure this hydrogen will be limited in Europe, and only a limited amount of value chains or industries will be able to use this. And for Europe itself, it's important to keep these value chains, to keep these industries, but we have to make choices in this. And initiatives as the Hydrogen Bank that has a great target of 20 million tons of produced hydrogen in Europe by 2030. If we want to make this work, we have to be realistic about the price. Otherwise, there cannot be effective policy right there. And as Europe, we have to choose where we will put our limited hydrogen. And in the coming years, we will invest a huge amount of money, and let's put that in the right industries. All right.
Thank you. And Naveen, what do you think are the sort of offtake barriers, or if there are any, where you are, the regions you are operating?
So I think there are challenges. I think it is a circular and sustainable loop which we have to solve. So we are the steel makers. We need hydrogen on a consistent basis. So we are willing to take a longer plunge, but this plunge has to be also sustainable. I sign a contract today at a price which will become unsustainable after 3-4 years, because every day, every week, every month, technologies are changes, the geographic terrains are changing, and the profiles and so many factors, right? So that is one part of the aspect. The second part of the aspect is about who are going to be my customers. So we see a lot of traction from customers like automobile, from the wind turbine manufacturers, and from the consumer durables. So there is so much of traction from those guys as well. So I think we have to make a fine balance between these two. Sometimes it may so happen that there is a disconnect where my ultimate customer of green steel is willing to sign a contract for 3-4 years, 5 years, but then on the other side, where I have to sustain the life of my asset is more than 25 years, so I cannot sort of take a plunge on a shorter target. So it's a fine balance which we all have to do. That is point 2. Third is about the technology selection. I think for us, we believe that as we move forward, electrolyzer technology is going to play an important role. Solar has more or less reached to a maturity level, so has wind. But electrolyzer for us, steel making, I think alkaline has reached a mature cycle, but we believe that for us as the steel makers, SOEC can be a potentially better technology where we can integrate, and we have all steel integrated plants where we can use the excess heat energy for the SOEC. But it is not mature. As we move forward, I think there will be good traction where we can see that SOEC can become a better technology. So all in all, I think it is a puzzle, and as we go, there is a more clarity, and we believe overall, I think the customer is what motivates you and inspire you. And I think in our case, the customers have really motivated us, and we believe that green steel is going to be a compelling business case. Customers are willing to give us a premium, and they believe that yes, with incremental capex of or incremental value of 1 to 2% in the overall scheme of thing, it is nothing. Thank you so much.
I like that optimistic view. I think we're going to pick up a few things after that. I'm going to definitely come back to you, Paul. So over to you, Bente.
Yeah, I think for us it's important to, there's definitely a knowledge gap and technology gap between the off-taker and the hydrogen producer. So for us it's really important to work to close those knowledge gaps. First and foremost, the technology to use the molecule by the end user has to be commercially and technically available. We also need to work as hydrogen developers across the whole value chain to make it more efficient, to close the gap on these the price cost side, and also, but at the same time making sure that you meet the security of supply requirements from the off-taker. A third point would really be to engage with the off-taker to make sure an efficient integration of hydrogen into the system. I think that kind of sums it up, and that's how we work in Hydro Havrand to help qualify that technology by full-scale testing and piloting in projects to confirm the technology.
Very, very good points. I mean, we heard about, the need for regulatory clarity, level playing field among sectors and regions as well. It's also steel sectors like steel are globally traded. Electrolyzer supply chains are globally, they're globally relevant. Need to bridge the price gap, commercial gap, being competitive, not just bankable. And of course, the knowledge gap is important. Now, I like that we started being a little bit technical. So we have these off-takers. These are all sectors that are crucial for our economy. I would say more crucial than oil and gas because we need steel and, aviation fuels, in the next, years, we can phase out some other things, but these are really crucial building blocks of our economies and societies. So I want to ask, and we need to decarbonize, and we know that we agree, we know the technology is there. So where does, and you're going to be a big off-taker, so where does now hydrogen sit in your sort of planning? Like, there's a lot of course it's complex, but you are preparing for it. So I'd like to hear sort of a little bit more the off-take volumes we're talking about, the technologies, and how do you think we need to put different pieces together to get there? So what do we see happening so that you can get off that big off-take commitment? So maybe we go a bit technical, so you will explain a little bit to me the volumes, the process, and what do you have in your horizon. But I'll also let you respond to Naveen that, with steel, the business case is there. Do you agree?
That's quite, yeah. Do we have some time? No. No, to be honest, for the whole steel industry, moving to hydrogen is new. Nobody's done it yet. We've made some ignits of fossil-free steel, but what basically the industry is moving towards, they're taking a concept that's called direct reduced iron. There's about 40 plants in the world that where there's a lot of gas, and you use gas as the reduction to take the iron ore and make steel out of it. That process, rather than putting gas at the bottom of that unit, you can actually put hydrogen in, and that should be very simple in theory. The problem that you're going to run into is that you need carbon actually in your end product. So when you suddenly start putting a huge amount of hydrogen in there, how do you get the carbon in the end product? So that is something that the whole industry will be looking at. How can we optimize? Don't forget, at our side, we've been there, well, almost as long as Norsk Hydro has been using electrolyzers. We've been there almost 100 years, and that's a completely optimized steelmaking process. And now we're suddenly changing that completely, and we want to do it fossil-free. So there's definitely hurdles on our side and also on the production side. So I agree with Bente, integrating that and exploring the steelmaking synergies is going to be the synergy benefits with the steelmaking process is going to be really interesting. And talk about the market, I think that's the second part. The second question is that I think there's some progress being made. It's a completely new product, fossil-free steel. And but let's not forget, the steel market is a super highly competitive global market. So in Europe, it's very good that we're coming with the carbon border adjustment mechanism. But then again, it's an international market. And in the end, some customers, they will be driving it and it's fossil-free, it's great. But can we convert our whole current production and make it fossil-free and have a market for that? No, it's going to be gradual. It's going to be gradual.
That's a very good point. There are steps that will be taken, and perhaps first with direct reduction in gas and then to hydrogen. And Mark, I'm going to ask you again a little bit technical question. Mark, with the Port of Amsterdam, because same at the port. So we're not going to immediately have the offtake. There's the technology side of it. So you're going to have to be prepared to handle that offtake as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Because I mean, the role of Port of Amsterdam is a bit different than regular off-takers. So we're responsible for the overall development and management of the port, but we obviously try to facilitate the development that is happening with the commercial parties like Tata Steel, like SkyNRG. So the timelines are also basically, they come from the commercial parties, right? So they have their own timeline, their own pace of development, and we just try to facilitate and see in what way we can support to make that a reality in whichever way we can. So I think speaking about timeline for the Port of Amsterdam, I think what we foresee, or at least hope for, is that by 2027 we will have the first volumes of green hydrogen come into the Port of Amsterdam. And I think the key driver, I don't want to really take too much away from SkyNRG, but will be the aviation industry, because there are already some legislation is already in place, some mandates are in place, so that will be, I think, a big driver for the first volumes of green hydrogen that we will start to receive in the Port of Amsterdam. And I think second, what is important, and was also something that I mentioned before, is that the transport. So that's obviously a key factor, because there will be local production within the Port of Amsterdam, but the Netherlands is only blessed with a lot of wind and unfortunately not a lot of sunshine. I think, as you can see when you go outside today. but it will not be sufficient. So we will rely on import flows, and there you need to have new ways of transporting hydrogen. Like I mentioned before, we're focusing on non-ammonia vectors. So that's technology that is still in development. So that also needs to keep pace with both on the production side, so in countries of origin, and with the with the developments happening right here in the port of Amsterdam. So I think aligning the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream is a key factor that we try to facilitate, and I think is also crucial in making the timelines that the companies expect a reality.
So you're putting different pieces together as we speak.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the role that we play. So and that's also why that the whole challenge of matching offtake and supply is something that's just again and again is the first question that's being asked when we engage with potential producers. Because before, I think the discussion was more about can we produce sufficient, and I mean, are the technological challenges that come with hydrogen production, can we tackle those? And I think in the last half a year or so, maybe a year, you can kind of see that changing, where there's a lot more confidence in that there will be sufficient production, but there's a lot of question now in the price, like Mark mentioned before, and can we actually have a match between off-taker and supplier? And we try to facilitate in that dialogue, and that's why we see that this is one of the key challenges that needs to be tackled.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If I may comment on that, I think it's always a good reality check if we just realize that the only FID on large-scale electrolyzers in Europe is the Shell Holland Hydrogen 1 project. That's the only one. So there's been a lot of talk, but actually going to FID is a challenge, which we need to work together on together.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we've learned that by now. So, Mark?
So for our process, I don't know if integration is that eminent, but we for PTL, hydrocarbon, in this case ESAF, there's two simple building blocks. I tell it really simple. It's of course a really complex process, but the starting point is H2 and CO2, and you basically build it from there to kerosene. But integration directly with the electrolyzer, I don't see that much. The nice thing of Amsterdam is, and locating our plant there, is that the infrastructure either is there or is in development. The idea is that there will be a CO2 pipeline, there will be HNS, the H2 pipeline. So we are not directly, we don't need to sit next to an electrolyzer. The electrolyzer can be somewhere else, and they just have to supply us with the green hydrogen. And in principle, I mean, our market is driven by the mandate. But still, we need to be kind of competitive with other countries, of Oman maybe, or of the Nordics, or even the US. And so we don't have to match the fossil fuel price, but it needs to be in a certain bandwidth. And now it's off. And that's that is the main message. What is withholding us to sign an offtake agreement? In the end, there will be a one-to-one for the first projects, as there is no commodity market for hydrogen yet. There will be a one-to-one match with an electrolyzer or a hydrogen producer, providing they will supply us hydrogen via the backbone we will connect to. And, yeah.
But I'll follow up on that, because you did say Oman, and I want to ask Naveen, why did you pick Oman? Is that because you thought there's more, let's say, offtake possibility for hydrogen?
You ask
For him, why Oman? But you can also say, why did you ask that question? Yeah.
I think Oman has actually amazing potential. You know, there are two factors. First is solar. So Oman has got close to 4,000 hours of sunshine, and the photovoltaic power is one of the best in the world. That is close to 5.2 kilowatt per kilowatt hour. That is on the solar side. The net capacity factor is somewhere around 32 to 35%, you know, which is pretty high. And then you talk about the wind velocity. Wind velocity, the average wind velocity in Oman is close to 7.5 to 8 meter per second, average. There are seasons where the velocity goes as high as 11 to 12 meter per second. Yeah, the wind density is at or comparable to Netherlands. It is close to 252 watt per meter square. So I think Oman as a mix of solar and wind is an amazing potential. That is one. Second is about the logistics part of it. Oman is exactly coming in midpoint of all your geographies. We believe that yes, the demand has been already created in Europe, right? There is a demand of close to 100 odd million tons of flat products, steel products by 2030. So we believe that Oman can be a manufacturing powerhouse as we move forward. And the inbound and the outbound logistics are so good that you also tend to reduce a lot of carbon intensity in your scope 3. So Oman is a compelling case, and the geography is good. The government is very good, very easy, very open to discuss. And as we see, I think for the betterment of the audience, let me tell you that the government of Oman has tendered, or they intend to tender 50,000 square kilometer of land by 2030 with 3 to 4 rounds. So as we speak, the round 1 is going on, and probably Oman will be the first country in the world which have got the proper policies for hydrogen offtake, what are the policies, how the projects will be executed, and how are the timeline and all the stuff. So I think in that way, they are pretty progressive in nature, and we believe that it is going to be the first steel plant that we see that the actual green steel will be out by 26, 27.
Thanks a lot. And I want to turn to aluminum. It's another sector we need to decarbonize. It's not that complex, perhaps as steel, because you can electrify it more or less. But it's definitely a building block of our society. So you have an integrated setup where you are also providing your own, let's say, offtake for your parent company. But still, are there challenges, and why did you decide to do it that way than perhaps relying on an offtake elsewhere?
Well, yeah, it's always challenges, also with the internal customers, of course. But we come back to you have to build stone on stone with the qualification of the technology to get it rolled out. So it takes time, of course. But in high temperature processes in the aluminum smelters, hydrogen is a good solution. So now we just have to confirm that the metal quality or aluminum quality is still good after introducing hydrogen. We need to show that we can operate and maintain it in a similar way, and that the quality doesn't lose its value. So that's one part of it. But we're also in parallel working with external customers, and usually with external partners. So we're actually also in with H2 Green Steel in Brazil, supplying hydrogen to a DRI plant as a reductant, and also looking at maturing more down the road. Large export play to Europe, for example. So we're still working with external customers as well, but the internal customer side, it takes some time to get to the point where you can roll it out. So I guess that's the main challenge on the timeline.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we still have 10 minutes. It's 2 minutes each for you. We touched upon it, but we didn't elaborate too much on policy. So I'll give you each 2 minutes to say what policy needs to be in place for your specific sector and your specific region. So you have 2 minutes, and we go with the same order again. So we start with you, Paul.
Thank you. I do get a little bit more preparation time from our board. And there we haven't even figured it out, because what happened in Europe is, and I mentioned level playing field at the beginning, the problem is that America started with like a clean slate, and they decided we're going to support decarbonization via an Inflation Reduction Act. We're not even giving it subsidies, we're giving it production tax credits. Now, it's a great invention, because in Europe we would call it a subsidy. They don't. So suddenly in America you've got this huge momentum gearing up. People making investment decisions. Wall Street is backing it. The Republicans and the Democrats are backing it. It's a wealth generator. It's creating jobs and everything. And in Europe, I think the main risk that we run is we want to be super green from the moment get-go. And I think it's more a transition process, and it takes time. And we run the risk in Europe of excluding good solutions for the need to have excellent solutions. And I think that's really slowing us down. So I don't envy the politicians in Brussels and The Hague, because it's really a complicated process to how do you make a level playing field in an existing market where there's so many market distortions from your own creation for good intentions, and how do you level it off? So, well, that's why we're having a dialogue. And we can put forward what we would like to have, but how to include that into the overall picture is going to be a complicated process, and it's going to take us some time. And therefore, I don't think Europe will be a first mover, but I think the main question is being a first mover in the hydrogen business a competitive advantage? Probably with the state of technology, it's probably not. Probably maybe do an Apple, wait a little bit and then pound on it.
Interesting. What do you think, Mark?
I'm glad Paul went first. No, I'm actually gonna steal a quote from a roundtable I was at this morning, and I will give credit. So it was said by the managing director of ICC, Marcel Gallier, and he was also comparing the policy in the United States and what we're doing in Europe. And he mentioned, so in Europe, the focus of policy is really on decarbonization. So that's the primary focus. Whereas in the United States, it's more about building basically the economy of the future. So the investments that they're making is also to make to ensure basically that the American economy is also ready for the future and can continue to grow in these new sectors. And I think that's also a very important distinction between the two, especially when you think about the potential benefits that it will accrue when you can actually develop these types of activities within the European market. So I think that's the way basically to look at it differently, to also perceive any public policy and investments from that perspective, to also see if you can stimulate those types of industrial activities and really use the policy as an instrument to make sure that in 2050 the European economy is also a very, very big player in this space. I think that's the key point. So I don't really have any particular details, but I think it's more about the overall way that you perceive policy, and basically that it doesn't need to be excluded. You can stimulate and focus on the economic and commercial development, and at the same time decarbonize.
Perfect. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, a lot of policy is getting, actually, for our industry, is getting clear right now. Like the Refuel EU, the rules, what is an RNFBO, the Delegated Act for green hydrogen. These are all building blocks, and becoming clear what the requirements are is something we are waiting for a long time. And I think what I said earlier, initiatives as the Hydrogen Bank is quite important for us to actually become an off-taker for hydrogen in Europe and make it competitive. So I'm really looking forward to that becoming that clear, yeah, and then we can move forward.
Maybe I can add to that. There's going to be an opportunity to provide input and learn more about the Hydrogen Bank on 16th of May. I believe you can still check with the Commission's website and watch that process. There will be like a full day elaborations on the Hydrogen Bank, and I think registrations are closed, but you can still watch it and learn more. Naveen, I'll give you the floor for policy landscape, perhaps even permitting, if you would like to say a few things in the next 2 minutes.
No, I think so far as the policy is concerned, this business cannot run on subsidies. This can, even if first of all, the mind has to be changed. You have to embrace the change management that yes, we what kind of legacy we want to keep. Are we going to give a greener future to our generation? Yes and no, because business cannot always run on profits all the time. Yes, it is imperative, but then you have to, because all along we have been making profits. Now it is a time where we have to disrupt the change, and change can only be disrupted once we change ourselves. That is point number one. Point number two, the demand has to be created among the value chain. We have to educate our customers, and someone else at the upstream side of it has to educate us that how we have to create the demand. The demand is the main thing. Like, just to give you an example, when we talk to our customers, like wind turbine manufacturers, we say that you are motivating us to shift from coking coal to wind. So yes, we are willing to change. But then we ask the same question to you, what about you? We are willing to change when you will stop using your gray steel, and when you are going to start using green steel in your wind turbines. So I think this is how, and everyone feel motivated about it. So I think this is a change management which has to be done, and we believe that as we go along per week, per month, per year, I think that things are moving very in a positive direction, and we believe that we are going to make it happen. Third is about the most important point which we are now filling in Oman is about the shared services. I think the offtake of the hydrogen, how you basically deliver the hydrogen, the seawater that is going to come, the salination on the offsite side, the training, which is very important, because this has to be an ecosystem. It cannot be a one steel plant on a standalone basis. It has to be the entire ecosystem that my downstream customers are with me, so that you create the demand, and also the upstream side. So the entire ecosystem can only come, if there is a dedicated zones, or what we say the hydrogen valleys, when we implement. So I think government is also taking note of all these key interventions, and as we go along, I think there will be good support from the government, and together I think we can able to do it. Thank you.
Bente, you have the final word.
Yeah, well, it's all about closing the gap, closing the cost gap, or the offering versus what the off-taker is willing to pay. And that can be done in several ways, of course. You can provide some subsidies in the short term, but you also have the opportunity to make fossil fuels more expensive, right? So that's the flip side, to force the transition. Yeah.
Great. I mean, we even have another 2 minutes to save. Do you want to reflect on any of this you heard so far?
Sorry?
Or I'm just wrapping it up then. I think it was great. What I took away from this is that it's really complex. We have, compared to last year, we're in a different place. We're more realistic about what needs to happen. It is a transition. It takes time, but it also takes partnerships and learning from each other and value chain corporations. There's this Swedish saying, partnership is a new leadership. So maybe leave you with that note. And thank the panelists.
No, perfect summary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.